Okay, so it's just gone 6, so we'll get started. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Obviously a few more might filter in as we go on. We are recording this so that it'll be available for everybody on our YouTube channel later, for those who couldn't make it tonight. So I'll just introduce quickly sort of who we are and what we do. So my name is Isabel, and I am a part of a team leader at the Future Frontline. And what we are is a resource for aspiring healthcare students and healthcare professionals. And basically we just want to be able to share stories, inspire future professionals, connect team members, people within the MDT and within all healthcare careers. And what we hope to do for you is, obviously, particularly this year, work experience has been extremely difficult for you guys to get. So we hope to provide sort of some kind of insight into what we are doing within the radiography role. We've got 3 diagnostic radiographers here today who are going to tell you about their life at work and as a student as well. And then there'll sort of be opportunities for you guys to all ask questions at the end. If there is anything that pops up, you can sort of ask a question, pop in the chat, anything like that. So yeah, so there's just a little bit about who we are. We have an Instagram page that you can follow, and a Facebook page. And we also have a Facebook group, which is a private group where you can sort of request to join, and you will be given the opportunity to sort of post, and it's just a friendly environment if you want to ask questions to people in similar positions to you, and just all kind of support each other through that. We also do have a podcast, which is really interesting, and some of our hosts have been talking to people from all kinds of different healthcare careers and getting their stories on that. And so yeah, you can check that out on Spotify or sort of wherever you like to listen to your playlist, your podcast. So yeah, hopefully those kind of resources might be useful for you. So yeah, this is just kind of our main message here about Future Frontline. Just that we're saying that the NHS is about more than doctors and nurses. There are a lot more healthcare careers that are, perhaps not explored as much, and that's something that we would like to do. Obviously you're here for a radiography event tonight, which is great. And also we at Future Frontline believe that socioeconomic status should not be a barrier to pursuing a career in healthcare. So that's why we hope to keep we will keep these events, free and available sort of for everybody to access, because yeah, that's really important for us. So that's great. And just so you know, there's some upcoming events if there's any more things that you might be interested in, and you can keep up to date as well on these on Instagram and Facebook and other social medias. So what I will do now is I will stop this and I'll head over and introduce our panel for tonight. So with us today, like I said, we've got 3 members of our panel who've kind of volunteered their time to come and talk to you guys. So we've got Chris, who has completed a Bachelor of Science in Diagnostic Radiography at the University of Cumbria. And so Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourself, tell us a bit more about you, what you're doing right now.
Hi guys, I'm Chris. I am 29 years old. I qualified back in 2013 as a diagnostic radiographer from the University of Cumbria, and then went on to do a postgraduate certificate in nuclear medicine. So my current job title is that I'm a specialist radiographer in nuclear medicine at the University Hospital of James Cook in Middlesbrough. So I'm sort of a bit of a hybrid these days. So I started off as an undergraduate at 18, away from home, and healthcare degrees are quite full on. And there's not much point in hiding that. There's a lot more hours in lectures than perhaps you might expect. Placements are full time. It is something you've got to take seriously when you're going into there. But I certainly enjoyed time as a student, and living away from home sort of makes a huge sort of experience curve. Makes you grow up and realise that you know, what you're doing is quite serious. At the same time, you still get that, you know, you get that student experience, and placements are enjoyable. You're doing these things because you enjoy them. So my
Sorry, oh, go on. We can
So
come
my
back to you shortly, Chris, if you want.
Yeah.
We'll just introduce everybody else, and then
Yeah,
we've
sorry.
got loads of questions. I'm sure you've got loads of stories to tell us, so that's great. Thank you. So also here today, we've got Letitia, who qualified from the University of Derby, again with a Bachelor's of Science in Diagnostic Radiography. So if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi everyone, I'm Letitia. I currently live in Bristol and I work at the Children's Hospital where I'm a superintendent radiographer. I went to Derby, qualified in 2013, went to live in Birmingham for a bit and work at Birmingham Children's Hospital. Completely fell in love with paediatrics in my second year of uni and was like, this is what I want to do, hence all the children's hospitals. I didn't go to uni until I was almost 21 though, because I didn't do very well in my A-levels and had to do a foundation degree. But here I am now and I love it. So really love working with kids and being a radiographer.
That's great,
me.
thank you. And then our third member tonight, we've got Laura, who is a third year diagnostic radiography student at Birmingham City University. So Laura, if you'd like to introduce yourself again.
Hi everyone, my name's Laura. As Isabel said, I'm a BCU third year, but I have clinical placements in Shropshire. I'm 21 years old and I also have an Etsy store where I sell radiography revision resources, and I also help and support students on Instagram. You can send me a message afterwards if you want to have a chat or whatever. And I've also secured a job in my home region, northwest of England, so that's ready for when I qualify, which I'm very excited for.
That's great, thank you. So a question for all of you really, but sort of in turn, why did you choose radiography? I don't know, Laura, do you want to go first, or you're still?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'd actually never heard of diagnostic radiography prior to going through the whole college process and UCAS, because touch wood, I've never been in hospital, never broken a bone, anything like that. But I've always loved science, biology-based subjects. That was my favourite subject at A-level. And I'm a naturally caring and helpful person as well. So I wanted something where I would be hands-on and, you know, involved, not just sat down all day. And basically, as soon as I started researching into it, I thought, yeah, this is the one for me. It ticks all the boxes, basically. All of my interests are like physics and technology as well. So yeah, that's it.
That's great, thank you. And how about you, Chris?
I sort of almost fell into radiography backwards. I was pushed towards medical school as I went through college. And the way the UCAS applications work is 4 med schools plus 1. I come from a healthcare background anyway, so healthcare was always where I was going. My mum's in healthcare. My grandmother was a nurse as well, and radiography was sort of the best fit for my skill set as the 5th UCAS choice. And looking back on it now, I'm actually really glad that it was radiography that ended up being the course I was on. Not only did I meet my now wife, who is also a radiographer. That happens a lot, by the way, guys, in healthcare courses. Which, minor word of warning, she's at work till 8 and I've got the 2 kids. So I may become that bloke at some point whose toddler comes running in the middle of this, but we'll see how it goes. She wasn't meant to be on till 8 when I took this on. But no, I kind of ended up going into it backwards with sort of a science and healthcare background, and I've really, really enjoyed it and been really glad that it was the degree I ended up doing.
That's great, thank you. And then you, Letitia, why radiography for you?
Again, I sort of fell into it. I originally wanted to be a vet, and then after not doing very well in my A levels, was like, not really going to happen for me. I need to find something else that's going to capture me. And it just so happened that my mum was working as a admin and clerical staff in a radiology department, and she was like, "Have you thought about being a radiographer? Why don't you look at this? I think you'd like it. I think you could do this." So I went in for some work experience and was like, yeah, I reckon I could do this. Yeah, this seems interesting. And then that was it. I just was like, yeah, this is the thing, and then had to work a bit harder to get there after not doing so well in the A levels, but really enjoyed it and still in it.
That's great, thank you. We've just had a request again, it's completely your decision, but would any of you be happy to turn your cameras on, because the screen is just on me and I don't think they want to see me. If you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But just explaining that is why you can see me, because I have my camera on. And
I would be happy to turn my video on. It just says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
okay,
So I think
well, just give me one
we might be
second.
barred from that.
We'll see if. How about that?
Let's have a go. It's still not letting me, sorry.
No, I'm still getting that as well.
Oh dear, I was not warned about this. Oh, well, I would. Video settings. Just bear with me for 1 minute, please, guys.
No worries.
Anybody know how to use Zoom?
Nope.
Because
Unfortunately, we use Microsoft Teams, so this is alien to me as well.
I've got into Teams recently. I mean, I would love to see some of your faces. Video. That's about sharing options. It says I can hide non-video participants, but I think that's not ticked. So what I'm going to do is we'll just carry on, and I will send someone a message and see if we can work out how to do it so that we can pop you guys back on in a bit. So I'm sorry about that, everybody. What I'll do is I'll just ask if some of you can, or each of you can tell me about your typical day. So, you know, what you do at work, if it's a day at work, or for Laura, you know, typical day at university.
I'll tell you about my days on placement. It depends where you're placed really as to what you'll be doing, because we have a weekly rota, so we'll be in a different place in the X-ray department each week. You can be placed in plain film X-ray, CT, MRI, nuclear medicine, theatre, all sorts of different places. Our general shifts are 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but as second and third year students, you can start to go out of hours a little bit, so do earlies, lates, night shifts. But the general sort of tasks that you'll be doing is taking x-rays under direct or indirect supervision from the radiographers, assisting radiographers with tasks such as helping getting the rooms ready, helping them to x-ray patients, maintaining room stock, booking patients in and out using the computer systems. Yeah, basically you're not going to be sat down for very long all day. It's very, very full on, very busy as a student particularly, but I do definitely enjoy it. I don't get nervous going to placement at all anymore. I would just highly recommend it. It's so fun.
That's great. Thank you, Laura. And how about you, Chris?
So I now work in a specialty, so I work in nuclear medicine full time, which means that my role is a little bit different to the sort of the plain film role, in that we spend our time, we inject patients with radioactive tracers. These are specific drugs that target specific organ systems, and we inject them with radioactivity, and then image what we see from where those tracers go. So our working day is a bit different. We generally work from 8 till 4 or 8:30 till 4:30, purely because those tracers have quite a limited lifespan. We can't work as late into the night as some other people. And again, our stuff takes time. We are generally looking at 2 to 3 hours per scan. So stuff that's acute doesn't really happen with us very often. But our job varies from radiopharmaceutical production. So we actually go into the lab, in clean room gear, in the full boiler suits and everything else, and manufacture the drugs we're going to inject. We spend quite a lot of time with our patients, because the scans can take upwards of an hour at a time. We quite often see patients on consecutive days, so you get a bit more involved in the patient journey, perhaps a bit more time with them than in nuclear medicine than you do in general.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. And Letitia, same for you.
So I am a bit of everywhere, especially in the kids' hospital. So we do like plain film X-ray, we do fluoroscopy, so like video X-rays, we cover theatres, and we do CT. So like last week, for instance, I did a night shift, a few day shifts, and then I've just worked the weekend. So my day is completely varied, and every day is really different. So at the weekend I was doing a couple of CT scans. I had to go to theatre. There was people coming in and out of A&E. We made a trauma centre, so you get all the trauma through. So yeah, you kind of go off everywhere to where the work is, and just you could be off going to theatre or off going to intensive care to do an X-ray, and you really see a huge variety of the hospital, which I really enjoy about it. And because it's kids, we do get like a little bit more time with the patients. You've got to kind of coerce them around a bit more, so and you see a lot more of the same patients again, which I really love. But yeah, my days I could be doing anything, throwing in with a meeting as well or two, just to add it into that.
That's lovely, thank you. Are you all able to tell me about some of the different well, not me, everybody, and me, because I don't know. I know dental, that's it. The different kind of specialities and sort of different kind of routes or departments that you can work in, with your radiography.
Yeah, I mean, most radiographers start off. I'm going to try and put my camera on here and see if this works. Most radiographers start off working in plain film when they first qualify, which is sort of your traditional projectional X-ray. So hands, feet, chest X-rays, the stuff that we are all sort of fairly familiar with when we've fallen over and hurt ourselves. From there, people can can spread out and specialize. Some people stay in plain film and can have really, really rewarding careers in plain film. I know there's some debate about quite what we call that these days, but that's for a whole other debate. My specialty is nuclear medicine, which is a bit of a strange one. We generally belong to medical physics departments rather than radiology, and can be a split between radiographers and clinical technologists, which are another skilled group of professionals, but not on the HCPC register. Their training's a bit up in the air at the minute, so we will not go too far into that. But for radiographers in nuclear medicine, most of us then go on and do a postgraduate. So I did mine down in Bristol at the University of the West of England, which was an interesting commute from Grimsby, where I was working at the time. Yeah, so that's my specialty. I still nip back into playing film occasionally when the guys have, particularly over the last year, covering overtime and trying to help out with the extra staffing required for COVID. So I still get to nip off to ITU occasionally and go and see a couple of patients up there. I haven't been to theatre for a while. So I'll let one of the other guys take some of the other sides of that.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah,
that
sorry.
sorry Laura, sorry. I'd say that like what I cover is a lot of different types of radiography, but it's all kids. So mine's completely pediatric, and that is a whole other skill set in itself, which I'm sure you do, some probably Chris kids as well. So covering theatre and fluoroscopy, but we also have a little bit more where we do some sonography, so ultrasound and things, and we have some radiographers that are training to report. So it kind of goes off into different things. Although I think Laura, as a student, could probably give you a good idea about what she goes through.
Just adding on to Chris's point there, at undergraduate level, besides plain film x-rays, you also learn how to take x-rays in theatre, so screening for surgeries, orthopedic surgeries, urology, gastro, all sorts of different things. You also learn how to do fluoroscopy, so barium swallows, barium meals. I don't know whether they do barium enemas anymore, I'm not sure. Also dental x-rays, so OPGs, I think that's about it really. But yeah, the main thing that we do is plain film. And as for what I'd like to go into, I'm not 100% sure. I think maybe plain film reporting is something that you can do. So that's sort of like an advanced practice route to go into, but sort of hand in hand with plain film as well. So sort of 50-50 split your time between those two. But as I said, I'm not quite sure at the moment. We'll just see when I've qualified.
That's lovely. Thank you, everybody.
It might be worth touching just very quickly there on the others, CT and MRI, which I don't think any of our specialist areas by the sounds of things. But they're sort of, particularly CT is quite a big growth area at the moment. There's far more, the expansion in the amount of CT scans being requested is increasing. That's a senior role for a lot of radiographers that choose that as a career path. And again, MRI is becoming more and more prevalent. Most major hospitals have now got 2, even 3 MRI scanners. So again, that's a big area where people are moving into. That's the big donut and the big horrible tunnel for anybody that's seen them on telly but hasn't come across them in real life.
That's great, thank you. And I wonder if you can sort of say a little bit more about, after you've done your diagnostic degree, I know you've sort of done some specialist training programs, sort of how long they took, how you got onto them, just a little bit more about your further training after your bachelor's.
I mean, for me, my postgraduate certificate was an extra year actually at university, but around about 2 years worth of practical training, about a year's worth of practical nuclear medicine before I was in a position to go and do the postgrad and really understand it. So, I mean, so whilst the postgrad only took me a year, it was 2 years post my post-graduation from my undergraduate before I could move into nuclear medicine, and then 2 years in nuclear medicine to be able to sort of finish the postgrad and take the specialist radiographer title on from that.
Yeah, so with the stuff that we do, like I've chosen to do a master's in forensics because I found it very interesting. So that's something I took on myself. But when we train like our sonographers, they do a PG cert for a year and then they start scanning and they can do patients independently. But then they go through and do like a PG diploma and everything in sonography. And again, with our reporting radiographers that we're training, they do the PG cert at Birmingham City Uni and then go off and do their report after that. But it's usually about at least 2 years of being a qualified radiographer and working in departments before you can apply for those sort of progressional opportunities there.
That's great, thank you. Anything to add there, Chris? Or?
No.
Amazing. So I wonder if you could tell us all about sort of what skills you think are really important for your jobs and your studies.
I think the key thing is to be adaptable and flexible, really, in both your radiographic technique, but also your communication skills, your patient manner, because plain film radiography, at least, is so fast paced. You only get 5 minutes with your patients. So you need to be able to adapt to those different kinds of people. You know, not everybody is going to be walking, talking, ambulant patients. You know, people are going to have different conditions, different levels of mobility. They may be hard of hearing. You may have children. So I guess it's all about, one of the key things is just being able to adapt the way that you sort of communicate with people, I guess, is probably the big one. So yeah, communication skills is something that took me quite a long time to build up, especially at first, because I'd never been in any sort of healthcare role. I only worked at Topshop before I started this degree. So yeah, it's something that will take a while to build up, but yeah, when you get to like second and third year, you do feel a lot more confident. So if you are, you know, a little bit shy at the moment, or you feel that you're a bit quiet, that's all right. You know, you can still go for courses like these, but yeah, you will be supported to build those up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and that's what I tend to look for initially from early years students, is just to build that communication, build that pattern with patients, and once you get that, the rest of it becomes far less daunting. So yeah, that the ability to communicate and to communicate effectively with different people is the key skill, I think, in all of this.
Yeah, I agree completely, and it's one of those things you have to learn many different ways at the moment, wearing masks and things, because you've only got so much of your face that everybody can see. So it's you definitely have to adapt your communication and be good at that. And it's about really getting stuck in with it as well. Like, you can be shy and not wanting to call a patient's name or anything else, but you know, as long as you want to get stuck in, you can work your way towards it.
You do get over that pretty quickly. Honestly, when you've been on placement for a week, you just go out and call someone's name, you just get over it. I know it's really scary at first, but yeah.
And any other skills aside from communication that you think are you know, really specific to this? I know Laura's and Letitia, you've been touched on being adaptable, being able to throw yourself in, but just anything else you want to add to that? Or...
I think you need to have some sort of level of patience, because although it's quite fast paced, it's very much you want to get a really good picture, and sometimes it just takes a little bit more and a little bit more effort to get what you need out of people to be able to do that. So you definitely need to be able to have a level of patience there, especially if you're they're quite hurt or in a lot of pain or very nervous or don't understand.
Yeah, I think an empathy ties in there, and getting what you want is to understand that, you know, these people, even if they're not in pain, are probably quite scared. You know, what's a routine chest X-ray to us? And I mean, I reckon I used to do 1,000 a year. For those patients, they are coming in with a symptom of something that they fear is probably something that could be something nasty. So they're frightened, and it's how do you get, in what takes about 90 seconds, enough reassurance across to that patient that you care, and it's not just about getting the picture and sending them out the door again. It can be, for a lot of those patients, one of the scariest days of their year.
I think also team working as well is something, because there are going to be some days or some patients or some situations where you're just not going to be able to do everything on your own, and you will need help. So it's important to be able to ask for that support and to know where to go for support as well. I mean, obviously as students, we're we're supervised by a radiographer, but even when you're qualified, knowing where to go to get that extra bit of support is always a good thing. And yeah, we work with so many different people, not just radiographers as well. We interact with referring clinicians, so doctors, advanced practitioners, nurses, HCAs, porters, imaging assistants. So yeah, being able to work within those teams and understand what everybody's roles are is really important, so you can make the best situation, I guess, make the most efficient situation for those patients.
Yeah, and working well under stress as well, like trying to keep your cool is quite an important skill, especially when you're in a place like theatre, and if something goes slightly wrong, tensions can get quite high, and you just need to be able to keep your cool a bit and do your job, and make sure that because you're all just doing what you can best for the patient, really.
That's lovely, thank you. And I'm really pleased that you've mentioned there about different MDT members, Laura, because that's something that Future Frontline are sort of really big on, and communicating between, the MDT. So I know you mentioned a load of roles there, but I just wonder if there's anything else you want to add to that specifically about the MDT. Or
yeah, I think in theatre is a big example of the MDT, because you've got yourself, radiographers, you've got the surgeons, ODPs, anaesthetists, scrub nurses, theatre support workers. That's a massive team all in one room. And again, like I said before, the really important thing is understanding everybody's roles, because like Letitia said, if something goes wrong, then you need to know where to go and who you can ask for help, I guess, because even though you'll be the only radiographer, all of those people are there working together, willing to help you, basically. So yeah, theatre is a good example of a big team that we work in.
That's lovely, thanks guys. So I just want to ask, obviously you guys work in the job, you know about it, so are there any other sort of pieces of advice, things that you think are really important that you would like to sort of share with the people that are interested in pursuing this as a career, before we move on to sort of their questions specifically?
I think the biggest thing to take into account is that it's going to be very full on. It's most likely going to be a 50-50 split between theory and placements. So obviously in first year, when everything wasn't affected by COVID, I was in uni 3 or 4 days a week, 3 or 4 full days, so 9 to 5, full of lectures, very heavy content. But then you also have to balance that with 34 plus hours a week on clinical placements, and they will be expecting you to do assignments on top of that to keep up with your revision. So any healthcare course is going to be tough, going to be challenging, but just make your plans, get organized. It's doable, as you can see. There are thousands of qualified radiographers, so it's nothing that isn't manageable, but just make sure that you're really going to commit to it, because it is a commitment. You're going to be there for 3 years, and then that's you out there into the world. You're going to qualify. So yeah, just I guess make sure that it's something you definitely want to do.
I would agree with that. I know a few people who started off in one sort of like healthcare profession at uni and then moved on to other degrees. So I think if it's good to do plenty of research and really know what it is that you think you want to do, just so that you don't really waste your own time. I mean, it costs a lot of money to go to uni, and choose where to go and rearrange your life. So it's essential one thing so that you don't go into something in a year and go, oh God, why have I done this? And then want to change to something else. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I don't think there's much I can add to those 2 points, really. I think that be clear in what you want to do, and just, if you haven't already picked your A levels, have a look at the ones that have a look at what the courses entail and pick wisely, because it does help. I did chemistry, biology, and maths at A level, and quite a lot of that comes in quite helpful with the anatomy and physiology and physics and whatever else that comes up as part of the course.
Yeah, talking about A levels though, I really didn't do very well in mine at all. Really bottomed out on quite a few and ended up doing a foundation degree in science because I knew that I wanted to be a radiographer, and that got me the points I needed to go. So there are other courses that you can do that aren't A levels, like you can BTECs and things that are a lot of coursework based. And if you're not great at exams, like when you get to doing radiography, it's a lot of practical assessments and it's a lot of essays, and there aren't a huge amount of in the room exams to do. So if exams aren't your thing, there are other ways to get what you need to do to go to uni and do these courses. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I just would like to add, like Letitia said, you can do BTECs, access courses as well. So even though I did biology, chemistry, maths A levels, you don't need to do that. There isn't one set route to get there. And also look at the entry requirements as well, because if you think that you're possibly not going to hit the higher grades, all of the uni's entry requirements are different. So yeah, like Chris said, pick wisely. That's another thing to consider. What uni do you want to go to? Because they require all sorts of different things.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, everyone. I think there's some like really good points there, hopefully, that people can take away. What I'll do now is I'll move over and see we've got a few questions coming in, and we'll sort of try and answer those if anybody else wants to add any more. So yeah. The first question that we've got here is what education levels are needed to be a radiographer. I think these guys have touched on it, but I think for specific grades and things like that, we would advise that you look on the websites for each university or on UCAS, to see what the entry requirements are for a particular place. But I don't know if these guys are willing to give you sort of a ballpark, like things vary. So I don't know if they want to add.
At the time of myself applying, the average requirement grade was 3 Bs at A level, but again, I don't know about BTECs, access courses, that side of things, but averages at 3 Bs at A level, some are higher, some are less.
Yeah, that's certainly true of when I started. I applied for university in 2009, so that ballpark doesn't appear to have moved a great deal in the last very nearly 10 years, which makes me feel slightly ill. But over 10 years. So yeah, that if we are talking the traditional A-level route, appears to be sort of the ballpark figure that we need. But as we've touched on as well, there are other ways in, particularly with the new degree apprenticeships that are coming up. I don't know a great deal about those. Laura, I don't know whether Letitia, I don't know whether that's something that you guys have any more on.
Yeah, we have a couple of apprentice radiographers training at my clinical placement sites. I'm aware that they go to the University of Exeter, and I think there's one other university that does that as well. But those already had a background as qualified assistant practitioners, so band 4 APs. I'm not sure about how you get onto those. I think it's relatively new. But as I said, I think the Uni of Exeter does those, if that's something that you'd be interested in. Again, another route in.
Yeah, we've got a couple of apprentices training in our trust at the moment, but they were all people that are already working in radiology and kind of knew about radiology, like assistants and things, which is the other option. You can have a look if you want to take a year out and work. You can try and apply for a job as a radiology assistant and radiographic assistant, and they're really helpful and they see all the patients. You can have a look at the advanced practice courses, and then you do the plain film x-rays. So there's lots of other ways to get into radiology.
That's lovely, thanks guys. And also just to bring up again, so we have got this Facebook group, this Future Frontline, and that can be a really good forum to ask specific questions like this, because there will be other members who perhaps have taken that route that you're looking down, and hopefully we'll be able to answer questions on there as well. But that's great, thank you. So another question that we've got here is physics a course that is learnt during your undergrad or postgrad? I don't know if that's referring to medical physics or sort of how physics-based would you guys say your course is?
We do have a physics module typically taken in first year, usually a third of your first year credits. So yeah, it's at undergraduate level. It will be a module with an exam at the end of the year that you'll have to pass to proceed on to second year. Yeah.
Yeah, my course at Cumbria as an undergraduate was a little more physics heavy. We covered physics across all 3 years and covered science and instrumentation as part of that. I think that was mostly because one of our lecturers had a particular interest in sort of the CR and DR filtering, which is the modern sort of CR and DR equates to, for the guys who don't know, for playing film these days, because the days of wet film are gone, thankfully. But we had a lecturer with a particular interest, so we got a lot of physics on how that works as part of our second and third years as well. But it does, the course content does vary to some extent by university as well. So again, that's something to bear in mind if you're looking at where you're going. Is the prospectuses will give you an idea of it, and if lots of physics isn't your thing, you will probably be able to tell from the prospectuses which universities are more physics heavy than others.
Yeah, I would say I did like physics in the first and second year, and it was quite physics heavy in the first year, but the second year was a bit lighter. But yeah, you definitely cover it a fair amount.
That's great, thank you.
I think second and third year focuses mainly on like modality physics, so you learn a little bit about CT, MRI, ultrasound, that side of it. But I would say that at least at BCU, our basic plain film X-ray physics was done in first year, but then it's sort of more advanced as you get through into the modalities.
Thank you. Okay, so another question. So we've touched on skills, but I wonder if I could ask you guys about work experience and what you sort of had on your applications at the time.
Well, I had a day of work experience in my local trust. Again, this was back in 2017, so pre-COVID. Obviously, I can understand it will be harder for you guys to get work experience in departments now, if at all. If you can get one, I would highly suggest trying, at least try to email your local trust, see if they've got space for you to go and look. If not, I would say that any experience is good experience, really, as long as you can apply it to the skills that you need for radiography. So like we were saying before, communication skills, caring, helpful, adaptable, flexible. Even if you work at KFC, you've still got those skills already, but just being able to transfer that to radiography. Make sure you talk about that in your personal statement. If you talk about something, link it back to why that would make you good as a diagnostic radiographer. So, you know, it will be hard to get work experience at the moment, but just try your best if you can. And if you can't, they will understand. Universities do understand. So you won't be at any disadvantage if you can't.
Yeah, like Laura, I had it was sort of as part of the application process at the time. The university insisted that you'd have at least one day at one of their placement hospitals of work experience that was sort of seen by one of their clinical link tutors, if you like. So that was sort of the specific radiography experience I had. Again, was one day. I had been volunteering at the local hospice, actually, in between days on A levels, which again, it's just anything you can link back to patient care, to your adaptability, flexibility, communication skills, that shows that you can work in that kind of environment.
Yeah, and I think adding anything on else that you do, if you have any sort of interests outside of healthcare, You know, like I was a guide for a very long time, and I put things that I'd learned there, and I worked in Tesco for 7 years, you know, and being able to talk to different people and anything really relevant that you can add, it always helps.
That's fab. Thank you, everybody. So I don't know if any of you might be able to answer this one. So there's funding and bursaries available for undergraduate courses. Do we know if there's any available for postgraduate?
So I am funding my postgraduate MSc through the government's postgrad loan. So it works exactly the same as student finance, and it's just something you apply for at the start. And I've got the funding for it. It's slightly less in terms of you wouldn't get as much of a maintenance loan as you would do through student finance, so you would need extra on top of that, but it's a really easy application, and other than that it works exactly the same way. And I have only just this month started making a payment towards that, and that was 3 years after I took it out, so it works exactly the same way and it is available.
That's great, thank you, Laura. So we've got somebody here that's asking, is radiography suited for somebody who struggles with anxiety?
I would say yes, because I myself have anxiety and I've made it to 3rd year, so that shows you something there. But I would just say it's going to be difficult at first, you know, if you haven't come from a healthcare background, if you are shy, are quiet, struggle to talk to people, it will be difficult at first, but there's plenty of support for you. You know, if that's something you feel that you'll need to make university and your clinical placement sites aware of, that's perfectly fine, because then they can put things in place for you to help you with that, whatever you normally have, whatever you need. But yeah, I think just the takeaway is ask for support if you need it. You know, that everybody's there to help you. Nobody is going to let you fail. Nobody wants to see you fail. They're all going to support you both with your radiographic practice, but also emotionally, mentally. So yeah, it's definitely doable.
That's great, thank you, Laura. Okay, so another question, which again might vary by university, but how maths heavy is the degree?
It's as heavy as the physics is, I'd say. Sorry, Laura.
Yeah, pretty much what you said, as heavy as your physics is.
Okay, that's lovely, thank you. We have somebody who's asking about work experience and trying to secure some. Do we think the best way of securing work experience at the department is by sort of calling the department, or is there a better way, or any other ways that you know how to maybe access some work experience?
Yeah, probably calling is your best bet, asking to speak to either the clinical lead, student liaison, radiographer. If you've got an email as well, that might be a better way of getting to them. Yeah, or even calling the radiology department or the hospital itself. I'm sure you'll be able to get in some way, or even have a look on the website, because it might say whether they're accepting work placements or not with COVID at the moment. But yeah, it's probably department specific. So if you've got a number, I would suggest ringing that.
And as a superintendent, I wouldn't mind anybody phoning me and being like, oh, I'm just phoning about work experience. I'd probably give you my email and email you about it, but I wouldn't feel nervous about phoning and asking for that, because we've all been there.
And I think the biggest thing generally when it comes to work experience is just ask and just keep asking. And if somebody doesn't get back to you, just chase them up, because, you know, it's probably not that, you know, if they don't want you, they'll tell you if they can't have you, you know, just ask them and keep asking, because they probably just slipped their mind. So I'd just say keep going with it, and hopefully you will be able to pick them up, obviously COVID allowing, but hopefully that will start calming down. Okay, so we've got a question here about the Masters in Diagnostic Radiography, and somebody's asking if that's very intense. Do any of you know anybody who has done the Masters, or able to comment on that?
I have a colleague whose cousin is currently doing the Masters in at Robert Gordon University, and the Scottish radiography is 4 years, so they've just condensed the Masters into 3 years. So I would say that you definitely have a look at it, because it would probably be more condensed and very placement heavy, but it's definitely doable. I mean, I know a few people who've had previous degrees and decided to go into radiography, even through the undergraduate route, and they're all still radiographers, so it's definitely doable.
Yeah, I've worked with quite a lot of master's students. We used to have, I used to work, when I worked at North Tees and Hartlepool, I worked in general, and we had lots of master's students coming through there, and their placement time was about the same, but they had less time in university, so they were doing a lot more coursework on placement than some of our undergraduates, just to make that time frame condensed down enough.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a question. Can you get involved in research in your field?
Yes, basically, and there's a big push actually going on from the Society of Radiographers, who, well, the Society and College of Radiographers are the professional body and union body for radiographers in the UK, and they're currently pushing quite hard to promote radiographers in research, because we are one of the allied health professions that traditionally haven't been quite as proactive, perhaps, in pursuing research. And that, I suspect, partly comes down to long-term sort of staffing issues in terms of releasing people to do it. But certainly, yeah, the opportunities are there. And actually at James Cook, I know the Play and Film guys are currently doing a piece on paediatric radiography in a general hospital setting, and how that can be improved, sort of, because we don't all have sort of we don't have the same facilities as the major paediatric hospitals in general. So in terms of their imaging experience, doses, everything else, we are looking at that actually at our hospital at the moment.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chris. We've got somebody who is hoping to attend Cardiff University next year. I wondered if you guys knew about a route into sonography after they've qualified.
I'd say you do diagnostic radiography, and you get your time doing plain film, and you get your experience. And then most sonography training posts are usually internally advertised. There are a few that are externally advertised. That means, like, so the wider everybody else from other trusts can apply for them. But like, we're internally training a sonographer at the moment, and we do that quite regularly, especially for the maternity ultrasound that people do. But that's all internal, and it's people that are getting a lot of experience outside of the normal, going to their own workday and then going, okay, now I'm going to go and sit in ultrasound, and come in on their days off and get that experience. But it's definitely doable. But you might do radiography and decide that sonography isn't the one for you, and you might choose something else. Keep the mind open.
Anything to add to that?
Big advantage, I think, of a lot of the in-house training is that they tend to be funded by the trust.
Also, it usually takes, as with any sort of post-qualifying progression, they usually want you to have at least 2 years of plain film experience before you go for any of these posts. I mean, CT and MR are probably a little bit different, because those are sort of the most common routes to go into straight away. But yeah, they usually want you to have a bit of plain film experience first. So don't be surprised if, they will pick somebody for a training post who has a bit more experience than you. But I know that there are training posts coming up more and more often, because sonography is a shortage profession. So yeah, I think there will be roles available for you.
Thank you. So we've got somebody asking, do you think medical school would be the best option if you don't know what position you would want in healthcare? For this kind of question, I would like to say, in order to apply for any degree in healthcare, whether it's medicine, whether it's, you know, diagnostic radiography, whether you want to do optometry, in order to get in, because the applications generally are quite competitive, you do sort of need to know why you want to do that specific one as part of the application. I would say that's something that I've experienced. So for example, for me, I end up doing dentistry, and they want to know why you want to do dentistry, not medicine. So I don't know if you guys have had similar experience with that, and you think it's, you know, it's important to get your work experience and decide what you want to do, or maybe you think the opposite.
I think it is important to know what you want to do, because all healthcare careers are so different. You know, like Future Frontline says, a lot of people think that the NHS is just doctors or nurses, but you know, if you're just going to say, oh, I'll just do medicine because that's common, everybody picks that, but if you start writing about pharmacy on your personal statement, then they're going to be like, well, she doesn't really want to do this course. So yeah, you need to be specific. Basically, you need to know what you want to do and then write about why you want to do it. So, you know, take some time to find what you're passionate about, but I wouldn't say don't apply if you're not interested, basically.
And also I would add to that, if you get into A-levels and you still don't know what you want to apply for, you can take a year out and try, you know, all the work experience of all the different things, because like Letitia sort of touched on earlier, you don't want to end up, you know, starting and paying for a degree that you hate and isn't right for you. So I would, you know, I think it's worth investing the time before you you know, go for anything to work out whether you think you would enjoy it. Of course, there are always circumstances where things change, and we're not saying, oh, you could never drop out and change your mind. Of course, you always can, but for you, you probably don't want to do that, and for your wallet, you probably don't want to do that. So yeah, I think this is a really good question, because it's something that people don't often talk about. Is there anything about your job that you don't like, and what would you say like are the cons to it?
I really hate night shifts. I hate them. I would love not to do them. However, it's a really important part of the job, and there has to be someone available all the time. And in the hospital I'm at, we are alone overnight, so it can get a bit lonely, and that isn't great. And it is all on you. So if you're having a stress in the middle of the night, it is very much like, and you just have to talk yourself around and just get on with it. But then also you work some night shifts, you work some long day shifts, and you get days off in the week, and that's pretty nice to be off when everyone else is at work and you can go out and it's not busy. So I would say the cons are I really hate being up all night, but it does also have its positives.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of shift work either, but I'm going to go into it at some point. With the NHS moving towards 7-day working continuously, the likelihood of you working 9 to 5 every day, depending on your trust, depending on what you go into, is going to be getting slimmer and slimmer. So yeah, if you're not that big of a fan of night shifts or long days, tough.
Yeah, I'm one of the rare ones left in the NHS now that does only work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, and that's just the nature of nuclear medicine. And actually, that is a bit of a drawback for me, with my wife working shifts with 2 young children. Being on days has its advantages. I'm always home at tea time, always around weekends, but equally, you know, being out. So you know, there are cons to shifts, and there are some pros to shifts, and just occasionally I wouldn't mind one of those days off in the week.
That's lovely, thank you. And anything else that you guys would like to add about the things that, you know, I mean, not necessarily cons, but, you know, things that are, you can acknowledge are difficult about your job, but it's made worth it, or, you know, things like that?
I think as a student particularly, just that your placements are unpaid, so you may have to find, like I had to do, extra work on top of your placements to be able to afford just living costs basically. So for example, I work as a radiology assistant on the bank, so I can pick and choose my shifts whenever I want to, but you may need to find extra work as your placements are unpaid. But with the bursaries coming out now, that's definitely a lot of help. But I'm just sad that I only get it this year and not for the past 2, but I'm too old.
I mean, I would say as a because we're a major trauma hospital and it's kids, it can be quite distressing to see very sick children. But the bonus to that is that you're there to help on their journey and to hopefully have an impact to do something that will make them better. And without your skills as a radiographer, they wouldn't get the imaging they need and be able to do that for them. And the same goes with any patient. If you think of all the patients that have been in hospital with COVID, radiographers have been there every step of the way doing chest x-rays and CT scans, and it's a really integral part to the patient journey. So although it does have its downside of seeing these really sick people, you also do get the benefit of seeing them go home.
And that can be one of the frustrations, is as for such an integral profession, sometimes with the one that goes missing, with sort of the forgotten cousins somewhere on the lines at times, and that can be a frustration, I think, for a lot of the allied health professions, not just radiography, is that we're all integral to the best outcome for our patients, and just occasionally we feel like we've kind of gone missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why sort of events like this and drawing attention to different healthcare careers and not just medicine is really important, because we need people in these roles. So yeah. We have somebody asking about funding, and do you know if the funding is means tested? So I know that student finance funding is means tested, but I don't know how it works with bursaries or anything like that.
Yes, your maintenance loan is means tested, but your tuition fee loan, if you choose to apply for that, is standard £9,250 a year, which is your tuition fee. It's obviously based on how much money your parents' household earns, or whoever, if you're a mature student. And then with the bursary, new diagnostic radiography students will get £5,000 a year, and also an extra £1,000 because it is a shortage profession.
That's lovely, thank you. And so, as we've just mentioned, sort of shift patterns, somebody's asking about that. What are the shifts like as a radiographer? Is it always 12-hour shifts? And how many shifts would you do a week? So sort of we can talk about that, hours you work.
I think that really depends on the trust that you're in and how the shift pattern works. I mean, because we're slightly smaller, I would do one night shift and then one long day shift, and I would say I do one shift a week. So last week was a night shift, although I've just worked the weekend. I've now got 3 days off. So it is varied, although when I worked in Birmingham we did 3 long days and then 3 night shifts with time off in between, but that was also a day shifts. It's not constant. Like nursing is very, very much a 12-hour shift profession usually, and it's not like that. There's definitely a bit more of a mix.
Yeah, sort of echo that. When I was working in general before I went into Nuke Med, I'd have weeks where we did 3 nights in a row, which by the end of the 3rd night you do feel a little bit like you shouldn't be driving home. Then weeks of 9 to 5. It varies. I mean, the shift. I've worked at 4 trusts. The shift pattern has been completely different at each trust, and they seem to be constantly evolving as well. And I'm sure Letitia, as a superintendent, will have more grip on how many and how hard it is to keep everybody happy with the shift pattern, because the answer is you can't. They tend to get tweaked and changed pretty constantly in my experience, sometimes for the better, sometimes to be reverted back pretty quickly again afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where if somebody phones in sick, there might be a shift that somebody needs to cover pretty sharpish, and it's not always to everybody's liking that somebody has to step up and do it. But for the most part, we've got a good team, so it's not too much hassle. But with a team of huge amount of radiographers, nightmare.
Thank you. So another question, is it difficult to get the hang of positioning for imaging and things like that?
I would say it definitely is at first, just because the way you learn it in the textbook, those are textbook patients who can move the way you want them to, can understand you, can, follow instructions. But the reality is that not all of your patients are going to be able to do that. As I said before, you'll have to adapt different things according to suit them, so that you can get the best possible image and the best possible outcome for them. But yeah, you do get used to it. I mean, obviously your placements will help you with that, watching other radiographers, seeing what they do, seeing what adaptations they make, what changes they make. So yeah, as a first year, you'll probably struggle a little bit. I mean, everybody does, but you will get better at it.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything else, it takes time and practice. And once you've learned them, they tend to stick with you. As somebody that just dabbles back into playing film every so often now, it stays with you and it comes back. But it's just time and practice, and you will get there. Once you've got a hang of that basic textbook stuff, you will get the hang of adapting it pretty quickly with support. And that's always the thing, is just to lean on the radiographers you're working with, because they want to teach. Teaching students is part of the job, and part of the job that most of us really enjoy. So don't be afraid to ask and to get that help, because most of us want to help you.
And also, we're not perfect all the time. I had a day-to-day where I just couldn't get any lateral to save my life, and I just couldn't do it, and I had to go get somebody else. And even 8 years qualified, I'm like, I still need someone else to come and have a look at what I'm doing, because I'm not perfect all the time.
Yeah, I cannot do an APY view for my life, because I was never trained to do it.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like anything's difficult when it's new, but you're going to uni and you're going to learn how to do it. So it's their job to teach you. So make sure you ask them questions till you know. So yeah, just a few more questions, if that's all right, guys. Everybody, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tweak the cartoons, but yeah, I should be all right for the few minutes.
Nip off whenever you need to, Chris, you're all right. So we've got somebody asking, this might be a question for Laura, really. Do you have any tips on applying for a radiography assistant post? Is previous experience required? Any interview tips? Just anything about that?
Yeah, well, I did have previous experience, because I only applied for this job last year in the middle of the pandemic. So I'd obviously already had all of first year and half of second year as a radiography student. So that was my kind of background experience. But basically, as I said before, any experience is good experience as long as you can apply it. They're not looking for you to know every single thing about radiography, but having an awareness of the different areas that you're going to work in, because you may not be in plain film all the time. They may not have plain film assistants. You may be required to help out in CT, MRI, ultrasound. So do some research on those, do some research on what they're about, what the role of the assistant is there, so you're prepared for that. And then I would say, as for interviews, it's most likely going to be scenario based. So think of brainstorm times where you've worked in a team, where you've dealt with a difficult situation, just those sort of, it'll be very general, but also sort of directed to radiography.
That's great. Thank you, Laura. Have any of you guys worked in London? No. We have a question here about, do we think there'll be a large contrast in workload? I imagine not. I imagine the workload would be pretty similar wherever, but
I would say the workload depends on where you choose to work. And that's the difference between choosing to work at a really large teaching hospital, like we have Southmead in Bristol and there's a QE in Birmingham, or going to work at a community hospital in a smaller town. That would be a difference, really.
I mean, I've worked across the board. I trained at Cumbria, so we had the major hospital at Carlisle, which was not a major trauma centre, is so remote from any other major hospital that, you know, anything and everything used to come through the doors. And then we'd get sent down to do a week at Penrith or Keswick, where the pace of life was rather different. You know, little cottage hospital in the lakes in what looks like somebody's drawing room. And I mean, I'm at a major trauma centre now, and it's, you know, it's busy at Middlesbrough. It is equally across the river at North Tees. It's not a major trauma hospital. The workload can be as bad, if not worse. There's no, you know, any large general hospital is going to have days where it's really, really busy.
Most of the people
not in
I know.
Major, sorry.
Sorry, no, Laura, you go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not in a major trauma hospital either. I'm just in a district general, but it's the only acute centre in the county of Shropshire. So it does get very busy because it's the only place for such a large population. So, you know, you don't have to go to a major trauma centre to get the experience and to get somewhere that's busy.
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry, that most of the people who I know that went to London after uni went to go to be in London, not because of the workload or the hospitals, but because they wanted to live in London. And I very much didn't want to live in London, but I would say that the workload is probably the same.
That's great. Thank you, guys. And we've sort of touched on this one for disadvantages, but can you perhaps tell us what the most stressful part of the job is, and maybe how you manage that and how you cope with it?
Well, for me this weekend, it was a very busy weekend. There was lots of children out and about again, hurting themselves, falling off bikes and trampolines and things like that. And I would say that my moment of stress came because I'd done like 9 shifts in a row and I was so tired, and I was just like, this bleep will not stop going off and people are asking me for everything. And the point is to make sure that you communicate with everybody and you just go, I can't be in 15 different places at once, and you're going to have to tell me what you want me to do first, and that's how you deal with it. And you just go to the person who needs you the most, and you come home and you de-stress in the ways that you de-stress. I came home and had a glass of wine and it was very nice. And you know, everybody's got their own ways of de-stressing with that.
Yeah, second.
Yeah, I think the speaking over people. You go on.
I just second everything that he said. The difficulties come when you need to be in more than one place at once. And it all nails back to what we said right at the start about communicating with the MDT to find out who really needs you now and who can wait 10 minutes till you've dealt with one thing before you move on.
As a student, I would say it's the balancing act between everything. Like I said, you're going to have placements, revision, assignments, exams, everything to deal with at the same time, and you'll have stresses on placements as well. You know, you may not be able to get that view that you want perfectly. It may take you a couple of tries. You may need to get other people in to help you. But yeah, just make sure that you make a plan, balance everything, and make time for yourself as well.
Thank you, guys. I think that's some good advice there. So we've got a question. Can you specialise in radiography for a master's after a medical degree? Do you guys know much about that? I think it's a bit of a different.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a cross wires there, I think. If you've been to medical school and you are a junior doctor, you wouldn't specialise in radiography. You would specialise as a radiologist, which is a consultant grade doctor who specialises in the reporting of medical images in particular, and for some of them then interventional work. So you can specialise in radiology, but not as a radiographer if you've been to med school.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. And then I'll pop this as the final question. And then if anyone's got any more that they want to ask after that, please just head to our social medias and feel free to ask us on there. So has anybody had the opportunity to work internationally? Or was that ever sort of offered as part of your degree or qualifying?
Very briefly, well, internationally, Ireland. I don't know how much we're going to count that as international or not. As a third year on elective placement, I went and worked for 4 weeks in the HSE, which is the Irish Health Service Executive. Slightly different way of working over there. Radiographers have a slightly different role in some of the decision making across in Ireland, but sort of not grossly different. I don't know whether anybody's got anything to add on that one.
No, not in Ireland. I've not worked internationally. I know a few people have gone out to Australia and done some placements there and come back. I know that when I worked at Birmingham, we had a few BCU students who had come from Norway, and some students had gone back there for that. And my fiance is also a radiographer, echoing what Chris said about radiographers sticking together. He's not a radiographer anymore. He's still registered, but he's actually a data scientist now. But he won the Society of Radiographers competition to go and work in Tanzania when he was at university. So he went out to Tanzania for a month and did that, which he really enjoyed.
We would have had the opportunity had it not been for COVID. BCU offers a sort of exchange program almost, so you can go to different places like Canada, Norway, Ireland, basically wherever you want to go if you can organise it yourself. But yeah, pandemic happened.
Yeah, I mean, one thing as a qualified that has cropped up, and again, COVID killed it, was a lot of hospital consultants will go out and do outreach clinics and go training. So we have a consultant team from James Cook that go out to Ghana, especially as a team of cardiac surgeons and a team of endoscopists. And I was offered the opportunity to go last year. A combination of COVID and 2 toddlers rather meant that wasn't going to happen. But the opportunities do come up with consultant teams that go out if you've got that working relationship with the guys to be able to be offered it. Then there are opportunities to do it. But practicalities over the last year meant that didn't or hasn't happened as much in the last sort of 12 months or so.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, guys. I just want to say really appreciate your time. I think there's been hopefully some great advice there for people, some great questions, and thank you all for participating. We do have sort of certificates that you can get a sort of proof of participation in an event like this, because we know you might need it for your work experience. So I'm going to share the screen, and there'll be a QR code for some feedback. And once you fill that in, we can send you sort of proof of that, essentially. So yeah, and there also will be another QR code if you want to support Future Frontline. Obviously, we are delivering these work experience workshops for free, and we want to continue to always do that. But if you are in a position where you can support our team to help us run things like, Zoom accounts and all that kind of business, then that will be very much appreciated. So I will share the screen now, and just a huge thank you to our panelists today. Really, really appreciate your time. There we go. So I'll leave that QR code up then for those of you that might need it. If there's anything you panelists would like to add, then please feel free. If not, you're free to go, and thank you so much.
Yeah, just thank you for the opportunity, really. It was good.
And we can sort you out as well with feedback certificates for your portfolios and things like that, I'll speak to Tash, so that if you guys need / want that for CDP or whatever we're calling it these days, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.